Hey guys, in a previous video, we took a look at Kasm, kind of talked about what Kasm is, what it's used for, how it got started, and also why I've kind of got this need to install Kasm on a specific piece of hardware. If you haven't seen that video, definitely go check that out. In this video, we're going to kind of piggyback off of our previous video and actually go through the process of installing Kasm on that specific hardware. Again, if you saw that previous video, you'll know that we installed it in Proxmox. This video is sponsored by Linode. I've been partnered with Linode for quite a while now because it's a great place to host just about anything you could want to host. Need a dedicated space to host an app? Linode has you covered with more than 100 pre-built apps that can be installed with just a couple of clicks. Want to develop an app on your favorite flavor of Linux? Linode has you covered there too, with more than 30 different options to start with. Need to do some pen testing on your own network or app? Install a Kali Linux setup in just a few clicks to get started with testing your own security. You can also host a Docker setup, a Kubernetes cluster, and more with just a few clicks. From hosting a single website to complex multi-cloud deployments, find enterprise-level capabilities like object storage, Kubernetes, and GPUs at a 30 to 50% lower cost than the major cloud providers. Be sure to check out the link in the video description to get $100 in free credit for 60 days to see what you can do with Linode. So there are a couple of different ways. I'm sure there's more than just a couple of different ways, but for the sake of this video, we're going to say that there's a couple of different ways that we can install Kasm Workspaces. The first one, if we take a look over here, is using the Linux server Kasm setup. In fact, the folks at Linux server have worked with the folks at Kasm to help get this built properly. And this is a great way to do it. However, it's not how we're going to do it. We could, if we had a Docker server already set up, this would be ideal. We could just scroll down, find this Docker Compose down here, put it in a command line or in like Portainer or whatever your preferred method of deploying a container is, modify the things that need to be modified and deploy it and be done with it. However, because we're doing this in a Proxmox VM, we're actually going to use what we would call the official method of installing Kasm Workspaces. And if we jump over to the documentation over here, there's a bunch of stuff in here that we're going to kind of copy and paste, but we're going to talk about why we're copying and pasting as we're going along. So in our last video, we got as far as getting Proxmox up and running, and we got our storage attached to it. So our next thing to do is actually make sure that we have the ISO image of the operating system that we want to use for our Kasm Workspaces. So what we can do is actually come over here to whichever node we're going to be installing this on. We've only got one node for this setup, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Shell. And here we can see that we're logged in. So what we want to do is do we're going to do PV-EAM update. That's kind of like an apt update, but just for Proxmox. So we're going to do that. So the update was successful. So what we can do next is PV-EAM, and then we can do available. Like so, and then here's all of the stuff that's available that we can download. Now, I'm actually redoing this part of the video because I tried to do an install using 22.10, and that isn't supported yet, apparently. So what you'll want to do is actually use 22.04. Now, make sure that you download the tar.gz file for your virtual machine. I think the ZST is actually for a container. So make sure that you get the tar.gz if you're going to be doing virtual machines here. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy that. Then I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to do PV-EAM again, download, that's our command. Then we're going to say, where do we want to download it? We're going to say local. You can choose kind of wherever, but local is where I've got my ISOs set up to be downloaded. So that's what we're going to do. And then I'm going to paste in the file that I want to download. And in this case, it's that 22.04 tar.gz file. So then I'll go ahead and hit enter. Okay, so it has completed, and it says that the checksum was verified. Everything there should be good. So what we want to do next is actually come over to our local storage option right here and make sure that we do have 22.04 available to us, and it looks like we do. Here you can see that 22-10 that I tried, or .10 that I tried, and it didn't work. So we're going to go with 22.04. So now that we've got that available to us, what we can do is come up here to the top right, click on Create VM. We can change the VM ID if we want to. Basically, that is just an arbitrary number for the system. You can kind of do that with that number, whatever you'd like. Some people I've seen will do, like all of their all of their media stuff is like 300s, and all of their infrastructure stuff is 500s or whatever. You can kind of use the IDs to categorize things, or you can just let them kind of just auto increment. That's completely up to you. For the sake of this, I'm just going to leave it at 100. I am going to give it a name though of Kasm Tutorial. So think of this name as like a host name, so there can't be any spaces in it. That's just something to keep in mind there as well. Next, we can either click OS up here at the top, or we can click Next. I just like to click across the top. It's just easier for me. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and come down here, and I'm going to select 22.04. Then I'm going to click System. You don't need to really change anything else on this page. So I'm going to click System. So here on the System tab, I've never really needed to change anything. Everything just kind of works by default for me. So I'm not going to bother with this. But if you've got specific needs, you could absolutely change your graphics card setting, your machine setting, your BIOS, your SCSI controller. You can change all of this as you need to. I don't need to, so I'm just going to click to the next tab, which for me is Disks. You can change the bus/device if you want to. Again, I'm not going to change anything here. I am going to change, however, the disk size from 32 to 256 gigs. I like to make sure that I've got more space than I want to make sure that I allocate more space than I will probably ever need. So next, I'm going to choose my CPU configuration. Now, I've only got one socket, but I do have 16 cores available to me. So I'm going to just go ahead and drop in half of those. I'm going to use 8 cores. And then I'm going to go to memory. That's next. And I want to do 16 gigs of memory here, just so that I've got plenty of memory available to my virtual workspaces in Kasm. So I'm going to put in 384 for 16 gigs of RAM. Our network, again, you can leave all of this as it is. You don't want to turn off the network device if you want this to connect to the internet, right? Firewall is probably a good idea. The bridge is probably, all of this is probably fine. Again, you can kind of tweak things as you need to for your specific needs. If you're happy with everything, you can just come over here to confirm. Again, it's going to lay all of this out so you can see it one last time. And then I like to start after created and then click finish. So we can see up here at the top right that it is doing something. I'm going to go ahead and just click that. And here we can see we can try or install Ubuntu server. So I'm going to go ahead and click enter. Now, because I'm an American and I only speak English and I don't have any kind of crazy configurations, I'm just going to kind of click next through all of this. So language, English. Continue without updating? Yes. Every time I've done the update to the new installer, it's failed on me. This isn't just a Kasm thing. This isn't a Proxmox thing. Every time I've tried to install Ubuntu with updating to the new installer, it's been a craptastrope. So I just do it without the update. So I'm going to do that. Again, my keyboard is all fine. My Ubuntu server, I want to do just a basic Ubuntu server here. I don't want to do the minimized rather. Just the standard install is fine. Again, we're going to have our IP address of 237 that we can see up there. That's good. I don't need a proxy address. I don't need to do any proxying to get anywhere. So I'm just going to click OK. There's the mirror address for the archive mirror. I'm just going to let it do the entire disk for its setup process. You could do a custom storage layout if you wanted to, but again, for the sake of simplicity, I just like to use the entire disk. So I'll click tab a couple of times until I get down to done and hit enter. Then we got one last look at this to make sure that we're happy with how all of this looks. If we're good, we can just click enter. Are you absolutely sure? Yes, I am. I'm going to click continue. Now, it's going to ask for my name, the server name, username, password. I'm going to go ahead and fill all of that in now. And then I'll click done. We absolutely want to install open SSH server so that we can SSH into the device and run commands and that sort of thing so we can get things set up. And we'll click done. I don't want to install any of this, so I'm just going to hit tab and done. And now it's just going to kind of go through this installation process.
A few moments later.
So at this point, up at the top of the screen, it says installation or install complete, and that's a lie. If you actually go down and look at the bottom of the screen, it says cancel, update, and reboot. I would say just let it run the updates. You're going to want the updates anyway. Just let it do its thing. Once it's done, it will let you know down there at the bottom of the screen. So just kind of hang out, wait for that to finish up, and then once it's done, we can go ahead and reboot our system.
A few moments later.
Okay, so now the installation has completed. Down here it actually says reboot now with no cancel update or anything like that. So we can come over here and we can go down to reboot now. And it'll probably throw an error like, hey, failed to unmount the CD-ROM. Yeah, just click enter. It's fine. So now we've got our Proxmox screen. Of course, that flew by real quick. Now it's going to go through this first time startup process. Some of this will be every time you start this up. Some of this other stuff will just be for the first time. So we'll just hang out for a minute, let it do its thing. And there we go. Just that quick and easy. Now we can get logged in. So I'm gonna log in. And here again, we can see all of the stuff that's available to us, like our IP address. And that's mostly what we're looking for here. So copying and pasting into the console in Proxmox, if I may be so honest, sucks. It just doesn't work well. So what I want to do is actually open a terminal window, SSH into this virtual machine, and run all of our commands that way. So I'm going to do SSH, my username at that IP address, and hit enter, saying, hey, this is the first time you've connected to the server. Are you sure that's the server you want to connect to? It absolutely is. So I'm going to type in yes, and I'll put in my password. So now we're logged in. We're good to go. What I want to do is go ahead and just minimize that and bring this kind of up more towards the middle, and then clear my screen with Control L. So at this point, we have our operating system installed, our base operating system of Ubuntu 22.04. The next thing we need to do is actually some prep work before we can install Kasm Workspaces. And what that prep work involves is actually creating a swap partition on our system so that if we run into a situation where you kind of overrun the allocated memory that we've given it, we've got a little bit of a hard drive that it can store files on and kind of go back and forth between RAM and hard drive. Now, swap is slower than actual RAM speed. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, how storage and that sort of stuff works. So it's just something to keep in mind there. Now, by default, Kasm Web encourages you to create this swap partition with basically 1 gig of swap partition per number of expected concurrent connections. Now, they've got it set to 1 gig all the way through their tutorial. I'm going to set it to 5 gigs for the sake of making sure that I've got more than enough space allocated for anything that I may run into. So the first thing we want to do is actually create our swap file. We're just going to basically create a 5 gig swap file there in the MNT folder, like so. So now we have our swap file created. So next we need to modify the permissions, enable the swap, turn the swap on. We'll kind of run through this real quick. So let's modify our permissions of our swap file to be 600. That is the permissions that Kasm wants our swap file to have. In fact, that seems to be kind of the go-to standard as I've been doing research about swap or setting up swap. So chmod 600 and then the location of your swap file. So next we're going to run a make swap command there, again running as sudo for that 5 gig swap file. And there it is. Now we want to make sure that the swap is on. So we're going to run that command. The next thing we want to do is actually make sure that our swap file exists. And we can do that just by simply doing cat proc swaps like so. And right there is our 5 gig swap file. The next thing we want to do is make sure that we attach that swap file to our FS tab so that it works anytime we boot our system up. It'll just automatically become available anytime our system boots up. So we're going to go ahead and run that and hit enter. There we go, just that easy. So that is the process of getting our swap set up. Again, links to all of this will be available in the description down below. So if you didn't see something here, if I went through it too fast, you can always go back and check out the links in the description to make sure that you've got a better idea of kind of what's going on. So now that we've got our swap created, what we want to do next is change over to our temp directory, download a file, extract the file, and run an install script. So let's go ahead and do that next. So let's go ahead and clear our screen again. We're going to do a cd into /tmp, and then we're going to download the most current version of the Kasm Workspaces file, like so. Again, we're just going to curl the file into this directory. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter. We're going to give this a second to download, and then we can get into extracting the file. Okay, it's downloaded. It's only like 10 or 15 megs. It's not huge. So now we're going to run a tar command to extract that file. And just like that, we do an ls here if we want to, and we can see all of the stuff that's in here. The next command that we're actually going to run takes place in the Kasm_release folder. So we could do it like a cd, Kasm release, do an ls, and in here we're actually going to run that install.sh file. So we could, if we wanted to, do nano install.sh. And right here is all of the stuff that's going to happen when we execute that file. If you want to go through and look through it, please feel free to do that. But that is way outside of the scope of this video. So I'm just going to hit Control X. I'm going to do a CD and then a double dot to go back a directory. And then I'm going to execute the bash, or I'm going to bash that install file there. I hit enter. And there was a lot of stuff that we just it just shot past us there. So just pretend you read it, I guess, or obviously go back and read it. It's completely up to you. We're gonna go ahead and click Y for yes, and yes, I read it. Now it's gonna go through the process of installing all of the dependencies that Kasm Workspace needs to have, including Docker. So we're gonna let this run, and then once it's done, we'll come back and move on to our next steps.
A few moments later.
So here we are just a few minutes later, and there was a bunch of stuff that it downloaded, including a bunch of different workspaces, so that they're just kind of ready to go, so that you're not starting with a blank slate. But we can always add more to those as far as what's available later on, and we will take a look at that. So basically, if we take a look at our screen here, here we can see all kinds of different credentials that we're going to need in order to get logged in. And the first one that we want to take a look at, obviously, is this admin@kasm.local. And right there is the default password that it has generated for us. So let's actually jump over to our browser window. Let's go to 192.168.0.237. Let's do HTTPS though. And we're gonna go ahead and say, yep, that's fine, and then proceed. So I'm gonna put it admin@kasm.local and paste in that password and click login. And here we go. Just that easily, we're logged into our Kasm Workspaces dashboard. And it's going to be a little bit slow at first as it's kind of going through its process of making sure that everything is running appropriately in the background. And there is a lot of stuff to cover in this dashboard. So that's honestly why I'm making this a multi-part series, is because it's too much to try to cover in a single video. This video is already very, very long. So with that said, the first thing I want to do, like I mentioned earlier, is go to edit profile up here at the top right. And then change my password, paste in my current password, the one that it gave me in the terminal window, and then I want to give myself a new password so I don't have to remember whatever it was it gave me as a random string of characters. And then click reset, and now we can use the password we want to use versus what it gave us. So one thing that I want to bring up, just for some security and sanity reasons, is that I am currently logged in as the admin user, the only admin user on the account or on the system right now. If I close this though, and I come up to the top left, I can see Workspaces. And if I click that, here are all of the different containers that are available to me. Now, you'll notice that some of these are more transparent than others. So the ones that end in zoom down here, all of this stuff up here, these are workspaces or containers, whatever you want to call them, that are currently available to everybody on the system. All of the stuff down here that's very transparent is stuff that's not currently installed. We can install those by going back over to the admin panel and doing that. But the reason I bring all of this up is that I would encourage you to use the admin account strictly as an admin account to go in and administer the server. And for any of the other stuff, you know, the using of the workspaces and that sort of thing, I would create an additional user for that so that you're not mixing and matching your admin stuff and your user stuff. I think it's just a good idea to try to keep those separate. But before we start following best practices, let's actually go over here and take a look at our workspaces and see what's actually available to us just with a default install. We've got Brave browsers. We've got CentOS as a desktop operating system. We've got Chrome, we've got Chromium, Firefox, FileZilla, Edge, Discord, GIMP, Focal, and Zoom. And again, there are several more down here that we can install. So let's actually take a look at how easy it is to get one of these installed. What we're going to do, obviously, is go back to our admin panel. We're going to come over here to Workspaces. And then we're going to select this dropdown and change that to a bigger number. And basically, here we can see all of the names of the workspaces that are available, what type they are. I don't necessarily think this is necessary for what we're doing right now. And whether or not it is enabled, you can see a little X or a little check mark. So if it's got an X, it's not enabled. If it's got a check mark, it is enabled. Very clever of them. So what we're going to do, we're going to come down to, let's do Kali Linux, right? So let's scroll up so we can actually see Kali Linux on this line. What we're going to do is click the three little dots over here, and we're going to do View. And then we can get an idea of kind of what's going on for, you know, the workspace ID and the Docker image. And we can see that these are all Kasm Web Docker images. You can't just import any Docker image into this that you'd like to. It needs to be a compatible image. You can build your own compatible images, but that's outside the scope of this video as well. So again, we've got a description, friendly name, thumbnail URL. How many cores do we want to give it? How much memory do we want to give it? Does it require a GPU or not? How many GPUs? Lots of stuff in here. What we're going to do is come up here to the top right and click Edit Workspace. And then right here we can see Enabled. Now we're going to check that box. We're going to scroll down. We can enable. We can change our cores, our memory. We can change the stuff that we want to, but we're just going to enable this for the time being. We're going to scroll down and click Submit. And it says the image was updated successfully. I feel like this could be more verbose, I guess is the word I'm looking for there. But if we come back over to Workspaces, we come up here, we can see Kali Linux, and there's a little red triangle right there. That lets us know that it is enabled, but there's no image for it yet. It is currently downloading that image in the background, and once it's available, that red triangle will go away, and we'll be able to get into the actual desktop operating system of Kali Linux in a container. So while Kali Linux is kind of doing its thing, let's just grab something like, let's grab Firefox. So just going to click that, and it says we can open a session in a current tab or a new window. Let's just do a new tab and click Launch. Give this a second to kind of spin up in the background. And here up at the top right, we can kind of see that a pop-up was prevented. That's a browser issue. You can change that. You can click there and say Always Allow and click Done. And then you can come over and click on Resume. But before we actually click Resume, just notice right here, our uptime is 0 minutes, and we've got an expiration time of 59 minutes. Now we can change that. We're not going to right now, but we can change that so that it will last, we can change it from an hour to a year if we wanted to, but we're just gonna leave it as it is for the time being and just click Resume. So it says it's loading a Firefox, it's creating a secure connection. We'll give this a second to pull up, and there it is. Over here on the left-hand side, we've got all kinds of different things with regards to how we want to interact with this, what our quality should be, should sound be enabled, those sorts of things. And right here it says we can open up an amazing internet. This is just the default stuff for Firefox. We're not going to do that. What we're going to do, though, and we're going to click up there, and then it's going to say, hey, do you want to allow copying and pasting between this Workspace and your actual PC, the device that you're actually on? Do you want to allow the clipboard between the two? That's up to you, but I like to say yes to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in youtube.com/dbtechyt and hit enter. Close that. And just like that, there we are. So that's what I really like about Kasm, is the ability to spin up a workspace or a container, again, whatever you want to call it, do the thing you need to do, and then just destroy that container with just a couple of clicks. So what we can do, let's go over to here and delete the session and say delete. And now it's like that never existed. It never happened. It was never there. So we can kind of do our browsing in private. Understand, though, this won't obfuscate your IP address. There's no VPN attached to this, so that's something to keep in mind. You're not going to be protected at that level, but if you wanted to go check a website you weren't sure about, you could open up, a Firefox, a Chrome, or whatever. Go check out that website. Make sure that it's safe before you go do anything else on your actual main PC. So conveniently, now that we're back to our dashboard here, we can see that Kali Linux is available. That little check or that little triangle up there is gone. So we can click that. Again, we can say we want to open the session in a new tab, a new window, or the current tab. We're going to say a new tab and click Launch Session. Now again, these operating system containers will take probably a little longer to deploy, but just know that they will deploy if you give them enough time. So again, here we are, literally just seconds later, we've got a full-fledged desktop that we can use for, whether we're doing pen testing or we're doing, like I said, malware, reverse engineering, or whatever the case is. Now we've actually got a secure, isolated desktop environment of Kali Linux that we can do the things we need to do and not have to worry again about that possibly overrunning our system, overrunning our network, and going where it shouldn't, because we're in an isolated container here. So again, up here, since we're in Kali, we can come up here and we can open Firefox. And again, we'll give this a second. There it goes. And again, I can do youtube.com like so. We'll give that a second to load. And just like that, now we're back on my YouTube channel just that quickly and easily. Again, we've got a dedicated, isolated desktop environment to do whatever it is we need to do. Now, there's a lot to cover in Kasm Workspaces, and this video is already much longer than I would probably like it to be, but that's why we're going to have to kind of make this a series of videos. In this video, we got Kasm Workspaces up and running. In future videos, we'll talk about, remote access so that we can do, like I showed at the beginning of this video, where we can access our containers from anywhere. We'll talk about adding persistent storage so that we can spin up a desktop, do our thing, shut it down, and come back to it later. We'll talk about extending our session times. We'll talk about inviting other people to view our workspaces as we're doing things. All of these are very, very easy to do. But unfortunately, again, this video is already much longer than I wanted it to be, so we're going to do that in future videos. So if you're interested in more information about Kasm, again, there will be links in the description where you can go check out the resources that Kasm Web had made available to us. And of course, get subscribed, because I do plan on releasing more videos about Kasm Web and the things that we can do with it to secure our online activities so that we can have dedicated spaces to try different things out, all kinds of stuff in upcoming videos. So definitely get subscribed if you're not already. But I think with all that said, I do want to wrap this up. I do also want to thank you guys for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.